Good morning, all you freedom-loving patriots out there. Craig Gibson here for Sons of Liberty, and this is Constitution Coffee and Service. Alright guys, let's get this Constitution Coffee and Service kicked off with our coffee of the week. And of course, it is none other than our Overwatch Coffee Shop ladder company. Smooth brandy flavor. Of course, it's medium roast, as all of our coffees are. I know when I first tried the brandy flavored coffee, it was like, I don't know about this, because again, I don't like flavored coffees, but this one is another really good one. It actually surprised me, and of course, all of our alcohol flavored coffees are non-alcoholic. Non-alcoholic flavors used during the roasting process, and then we end up with just a great tasting coffee. Also, our ladder company is in honor of our firefighters. So definitely come by and give it a try this week. We'll be brewing it up all week, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as we do. And of course, everybody's got their own preference, their own taste buds. But definitely give it a try. Don't let the flavor fool you. Alright, so this week we are finally on to Article 3 of the Constitution, which means we are on to our third branch of government, the Judicial Branch. What makes up the Judicial Branch? Well, a lot of people get confused here because you start talking about the Department of Justice, so you start talking FBI, law enforcement, U.S. Marshals, ATF, DEA. All right. Yes, they all fall under Justice, right? The Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, just so many different aspects of it now that didn't used to be there prior to 9/11. But when we talk about the Judicial Branch, what we're actually talking about is the Supreme Court and the inferior courts below it. So, you've got your Supreme Court, your Supreme Court justices, who their job is to oversee laws, to hear arguments in certain cases, and they are allowed to do this. They are allowed to interpret law. They are allowed to make a ruling based on law and the arguments of those arguing the case. However, the Supreme Court is not there to make law. Although we have seen that done. If anybody remembers, just a few years ago, we saw the Supreme Court put a law into place that there was no legal argument basis for it. So there was nothing to interpret. There was nothing to listen to the arguments on and make a ruling. Instead, they flat out made law. And unfortunately, nobody has ever questioned them on this. Nobody has ever fought back on this. They overstepped their bounds. But see, the big thing is, even the judicial branch has become so politicized that to fight it, to attack it, to call it out for what happened and what has happened through the years with them actually making laws could be considered political suicide. So unfortunately, where you look at justice, and justice is supposed to be fair and blind, but unfortunately it is neither of those things. Now, that's not to say that they don't get it right sometimes, because they do. They absolutely do. Unfortunately, they're human and they don't always get it right. So our Supreme Court, and then you have your state Supreme Courts, your circuit courts, your your city, county courts, your federal courts. Wow, I know I'm probably missing some. It seems like there's courts for everything anymore. But anyway, you have courts at various levels, but ultimately they all fall under and answer to the Supreme Court and the Judicial Branch. In order to be a judge, you should be of high moral character and in good behavior, according to Article 1. Unfortunately, we know that's not always the case. We've seen judges removed for immoral behavior, illegal behavior. We've seen horrible decisions made in the courts. And unfortunately, again, it goes back to both being politicized, but also just the fact that it's humans running all this, arguing the cases, both prosecuting and defense. So, yeah, of course, we still address the judge as Your Honor, but it gets harder and harder to do when you see more and more judges who have no honor sitting on these benches. Of course, the Supreme Court justices, the judges, are paid a salary, which cannot be diminished during their time of service. So, if you've got, like the Supreme Court, where you see a lot of times people end up dying while serving because they can serve for so long. Some have stepped down and retired, but some have actually died while serving. Some fairly old age. And you got to wonder if that's really, really beneficial to our country, to our laws, to our judicial system. So the Supreme Court has judicial power in all cases of law and equity that fall under the Constitution when it comes to treaties, which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, ministers, consuls, maritime jurisdiction, controversies that arise between states or between citizens and states. They have the judicial power to hear these cases. Let's see, all trials, with the exception of impeachment, shall be by jury. And we all have a pretty good understanding of why an impeachment would not be a trial by jury. When people are voted in by the people, and so we've got a two-party system. We have had for quite some time. You've got a few third-party individuals within that mix, but when you've got a two-party system, a trial by jury could be beneficial, or it could be extremely dangerous to the president or the vice president or any civil officer, who's elected. As if you remember from last week's Article 2, where all civil officers can be removed by impeachment. So, again, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing that there's not a trial by jury for impeachment. And then, of course, Section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only of levying war against the states, adhering and to the enemies of the United States, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason without at least two witnesses of the same overt act of treason. Now, it can't be two witnesses of two separate acts. It has to be two witnesses of the same act. And then, of course, Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment for treason. Now, at one time, treason against the United States was a death sentence. Now, it could really be anything. I mean, we've seen people who have honestly committed treason against our country walk away completely free. We've seen others imprisoned for life. Off the top of my head, out of memory, I cannot remember anyone put to death for treason in my lifetime. Okay, and that's only 42 years. So, but so it's got to make you wonder at times how much the government really has the people's best interest in mind. Now, we're not going to get into the politics of it or anything else or any of the conspiracies of it. I'm just going to leave it right there and let you make that decision for yourself. So, okay, so this one was real short. 3 sections, real straightforward on the judicial branch. Maybe we should have had more sections outlining a few things, putting it in writing what the judicial branch's roles and responsibilities actually are to the fullest extent. However, this is what we have. So next week we're going to talk about Article 4. Article 4 is we start talking about faith and credit that's given to each state. So that's going to be kind of a fun one, interesting one to go through. Here's the thing. All these articles, when we start talking about the different branches of government, we start talking about credit and other things that's going to come up in the articles. Everybody's going to have their own opinion. Everybody's going to have their own thought on it. All we can do is base it off of what the Constitution says, how it was written, and try to uphold our elected officials to their oath and to this Constitution. So, next week could be fun. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So this week we are just giving praise and thank you to our first responders, our firefighters, our EMS, our law enforcement, because I don't have to tell you guys, 2020 has just been a crazy mess. There's all the memes about Jumanji level 10, level 6, different memes about what book or what chapter of Revelation are we in today. All right, so we have seen everything from failed impeachments, at the end of last year into this year, a pandemic. We've seen tornadoes, especially here in Tennessee and other places. We've seen riots. I would ask what's next, but do we really want to know what's next? It would not surprise me at this point to see biblical type plagues just hitting the world right now. But you know what? Our first responders, they keep going. They keep doing their job. Our firefighters, they show up on those auto accidents and they get you out. They show up on rescues. Whether it's you fell from a mountain while mountain climbing, you flipped your raft, wildfires, house fires, large industrial fires. These guys show up to it. And they show up and they move forward. They fight, and they fight hard to try to save lives. Then you got your EMS personnel who come in to situations that, just like the firefighters, put their lives in jeopardy. Because they don't know what they're going to contract and take home to their families. They don't know if they're going to have an accident in that ambulance. They don't know if they're going to walk into a situation and end up victims themselves because it's a hostile situation. And then, of course, our police officers. What more can I say about them? We have some of the greatest men and women right here in the Collinwood and Wayne County area that serve and protect this county and the cities, towns. Let's face it, they're towns. Especially when you start talking about places like Nashville, Jackson, Memphis, Knoxville. Yeah, these are towns. But they do it because it's who they are. Because it's on their heart to serve their fellow man and to protect the people. So yes, this week it's going out to them. Because here at Sons of Liberty, we don't ever not support our law enforcement, not support our firefighters, not support our EMS, not support our military, past, present, and future. So yeah, you know, there's a lot of hate out there right now. There's a lot of name calling. There's a lot of people being called racist for supporting the flag, for supporting our military, our police, our first responders, for loving our country. But guess what? We're going to do it anyway. All right, guys, as always, faith, not fear. We will talk to you next week. Y'all take care and be safe out there.